call the roll, please?
Mrs. Sloan. Here. Mrs. Johnson. Here. Mr. Baer. Here. Mr. Greenstein. Here. Mr. Hohauser. Here. Mrs. Nadolny. Here. Ms. Weisberg. Here. Thank you.
The agenda, do I have a second? Mrs. Johnson, all in favor? 7-0, thank you. Before we have the community comments this evening, we have some certificates that we would like to hand out to some community members. Tonight, the board would like to introduce and thank the following people for their contributions to the events of Pride in Port: Barbara Faticone, Alice O'Leary, Sue and Dick Mara. All of these people have been a part of the Athletic Hall of Fame committee for over a decade. This committee includes screening of nominees, selection of inductees, and they have been participants in every phase of the Hall of Fame breakfast, including driving of the cars in the parade. Their unselfish dedication to having this event helps it to run smoothly and is what makes this event one of the highlights of Pride in Port. We have all seen firsthand the tributes given to the athletes and their wonderful stories and reminiscences of their time at Schreiber. Barbara, Alice, Sue, and Dick have been a part of so many wonderful memories of the Athletic Hall of Fame breakfast, and we recognize them tonight. We present them with certificates of appreciation. Please come down and receive them. Thank you. I believe Stephanie Joanna would like to say a few words.
Yes, I would before you guys leave. First, I want to thank the superintendent and the Board of Education for their honoring of these people today with certificates of appreciation, not only for help with me with the Athletic Hall of Fame, but also with Pride in Port. For those of you who have ever been to the Athletics Hall of Fame, you know what a thrill it is for the inductees and what a special day it is. But there's a lot that goes behind the scenes, and these people really help make that event go great. Sue and Dick Mara know it firsthand with their beautiful daughter Jennifer, who is in the Hall of Fame, and Alex, her son's in the Hall of Fame, and Barbara is just our Hall of Famer. So for your unwavering help and passion for the community, just want to say I love you and thank you for everything you do. I'll give you flowers. I don't know which ones to. Thank you.
We will now move to the student and community comments. I'd just like to remind everyone to please identify themselves for the record, and we do have a 3-minute limit. And to remind anyone who knows this or those that are here for the first time this evening, the board does have a lot of business to conduct, and we don't have a habit of getting into discussion with anyone that comes here for the comments or being able to answer all the questions this evening, but we are anxious to hear any of your input, and thank you for coming to share it with us tonight. And we are planning to speak to a lot of issues that you might be here to speak to us about tonight, but we know you came to have your say, so we welcome you to the microphone.
My name is Erica Trapp, and I am the co-president of the Manor Haven PTA. And I'm standing here with Michelle Duran, who is my co-president. I am also a parent of 3 young children in the school. I have a child in 2nd grade and 2 in kindergarten. I know that you heard a lot at the last meeting about the 3rd grade, but as I stand here to tell you, it is our whole school that is overcrowded. I look at our 2nd grade class now, and we are at a point where we have 78 children. At this point, going into next year, if you collapse us to 3 classes, we will have 26 kids in each class. I point out to you that the current 3rd grade was at this point last spring, and with movement over the summer, they went over the cap. The demographer's report that was drawn up before the bond vote showed that Manor Haven is the fastest growing school in this district, and it only seems to be growing and growing. As I said, I also have 2 children in kindergarten. At this point, our kindergarten has 80 children in it, which already, when collapsed to 3 classes, will put us over the cap. I know the argument has been made that there's not space, but I sat on the Compact Committee last year, and I have spoken to members of the Compact Committee this year, and there is space. The Compact Committee and our principal and the members of our executive board have been coming up with creative solutions, places to find spaces in our school for new classes. The situation we're facing right now is unfair. It's unfair to the students, it's unfair to the teachers. It's unfair to the kids who aren't getting a fair shot at learning because there are so many children in their class. Now, we thank you for what we view as a temporary solution. You got us under the cap for the 3rd grade. You got us EAs in each class, but it's not enough. We need smaller classes. And as we sit here, Manor Haven is growing, and each grade coming in is bigger than the one before, and this can't keep happening. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Lanie Lieber, and I'm also a resident of Port Washington. I wanted to follow up the conversation we had at the last meeting regarding the overcrowded in the 3rd grade at Manor Haven. I am thankful that we were heard last month and that modifications were made. My daughter actually met with the reading specialist for the first time last week and spent 5 minutes alone with her. While yes, I'm grateful it's something, it's not enough. My daughter Sabrina has a phenomenal teacher, but she's an average student, and she is not being pushed to excel. There are simply too many others with greater need. And so I've hired tutors to compensate for what's not being supplemented at school, and my child will be okay because I will take care of it at home. I tell you this not because my child is more important, but that I wanted you to see the reality of the policy set forth. I commend you on your attempt at reducing our class sizes using SUSE as an overflow school. I also appreciate the aides and the .3 reading teacher, but it simply is not enough. I would be hard-pressed to believe that any of you would want classes to be this size. And I understand that the budget reality we're facing is tight, but I would also urge you to cut any place and every place else before sacrificing the quality of education our children receive. So I stand here with my peers, respectfully requesting an additional teacher for next year. We will need 4 sections at Manor Haven for next year's 4th grade. I also want to publicly acknowledge that Manor Haven's current 3rd grade has set the trend in terms of grade size. All subsequent years, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, have entered with the same large population and will face the same overcrowding issue when they collapse the classes in 3rd grade. Short term, we need to fix 4th grade for next year and get a 4th section. Long term, we, you, the powers that be, need to figure out how we can have 4 sections, K through 5, at Manor Haven. Or we need to figure out how do we reduce Manor Haven's zone so that we can accommodate all the students in attendance. Every child is entitled to a quality education, and with my pride in Port, I expect Port Washington School District to surpass the national expectations. I expect us, and I think we all expect, that we're better than our competitors and that our child and all our children here receive a quality education. So thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Beth Aim. I brought my kids here with me tonight, partly because I had to, and partly because I thought it was a good idea for them to see the process, to see how a community can work when people organize and activate. In 5th grade at Manor Haven right now, they're learning about the fallout of revolution, about the Federalist Papers, the Articles of Confederation, and about what it took to piece together a system of governance that is fair and where everyone has a voice. I want them to see tonight, and as we go forward here, that even on a small grassroots level, the system can work, that it is theirs to man, whether to defend or protest, and that fairness is a real living thing still. I'm here specifically to defend my school. Manor Haven deserves at least as much as its neighboring schools, if not a little more. We were made last time around to feel as if the demographics of our school are meaningless, that we were rude for even bringing it up. I will say, maybe louder this time, that I love my school and everyone in it. It has given far more to my family than we have given to it. I'm doing this tonight because I want to give back, and I want to protect the uniqueness of our school and to make sure that those who cannot show up at PTA meetings and BOE meetings are heard too. That we as a school are having our needs met, reasonable class sizes and enrichment programming for all levels, not just the neediest students, but for the students who have different needs as well. You will be hearing a lot from parents this week about saving the PEP program, so I won't spend time here. I will just say that we ought not to have to make choices whereby one group of children suffers on behalf of another. You should not have to take away PEP in order to fund a 4th class at Manor Haven and extra classrooms elsewhere in the district. These are matters not only of quality education, but of equal access to quality education. You simply have to find a way to even things out and stop pitting one school against another, one academic issue against another. In a district like ours, with taxes like ours, we absolutely have to find a way to have reasonable class sizes and enrichment programming. Instead of threats, can we please present another option? Give us options we can consider. Cutting PEP field trips, cutting it to one day, finding places to make finer tuned cuts, or expanding the program in a way that benefits more of the kids. Do not leave us in a district where not only are our class sizes growing and where the neediest demographics are very much suffering for it, but where we can't compete with other districts for rigorous and compelling academic
30 seconds.
offerings either. We don't want to simply get by. We don't want to hold our breath until we get to Weber or Schreiber. We need to do a better job at the elementary level if we're going to continue to send kids on to Weber and Schreiber who are turned on and raring to go. It is not good enough the way it is, and our kids deserve better. Show them they have a voice and that someone is listening. Thank you.
Hi, Jackie Bodnar. I know towards the end of, I believe it was the last summer, we spoke to you guys, and I'll keep it short and sweet, and I think we're all unanimous here in saying that smaller classroom size is important across our district. And I sympathize with Manor Haven, coming from Guggenheim. I would implore and ask of the board to consider looking across our entire school district and school size across every single school, not just one. As much as I would like to focus on the school where my 3 children are, I think it's a universal challenge, and appreciate anything you guys can do to minimize it from the hearts of all the parents here. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Adrienne Sauer. I have a 4th and 7th grader at Daly and Weber. Question I have for you is, do you believe that all children deserve an appropriate, challenging, and enriching education to help them achieve their fullest potential? I believe that it is critical in nurturing our children to be better problem solvers, think differently, and think outside the box, which goes way beyond basic math skills and literacy. There are so many reasons to maintain and even restore PEP, but I understand that the Board of Education Administration are more concerned about its budget impact than its emotional and intellectual impacts at this point. I've heard arguments that PEP is one of our most expensive programs based on the per pupil cost. I strongly disagree. Let's look at the numbers. In a 5-day school week, there are approximately 32 hours. If each of the 4 to 6 core groups in the 2 schools meets 2 hours per week, then the PEP teachers only spend 8 to 12 hours with the core group students. That still leaves at least 20 hours in each week. What do we think the PEP teachers do with the majority of this time? They work with as many other students as they can in the schools to provide whole class enrichment. The PEP teachers are more than just the core group. They are a resource for their entire schools, and that's schools because they each cover 2. They spearhead Math Olympiad at their schools, where approximately 200 4th and 5th grade students from Daly and Guggenheim alone participated this past year. And I'd also like to remind you that we have the Nassau County Champions for 2015 at Weber, thanks to the efforts of the PEP teachers. In addition to Math Olympiad, when students can be scheduled into PEP, they learn about observation using magnifying glasses and microscopes. They learn about solids, liquids, and gases. They learn how to investigate a crime scene. And they work on critical thinking skills. Plus, at Weber, lunchtime enrichment is available to all students. If you're considering the financial impacts, think about what cutting enrichment and gifted and talented education will do to our property values. Cutting what is left of PEP will negatively affect every homeowner in Port Washington. What are the big selling points for homes in Port Washington? The great train line, the sense of community, the waterfront, Main Street, and the schools. Prospective homeowners, like everyone else, want their children to have every opportunity possible to succeed. I'm guessing that most, if not all, hope that their children will be smarter and generally better than they are. They hope that their children will be gifted in some way and want to give them every opportunity
30
and resource
seconds.
they can to succeed. What will these people think when they find out our school district doesn't have a way to address the needs of their possibly gifted, possibly not even yet born child? Will they be more drawn to other towns? Will Port Washington even make it to their short list? So, do you believe that all children deserve an appropriate, challenging, and enriching education to help them achieve their fullest potential? What are you going to do about it? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Agnes. I didn't prepare any speech today, but I really support that the sizes of the classes in Manor Haven should be smaller. English also is my second language, so my son, you know, with all the I'm sorry, I'm extremely nervous. So all the kids in the classes, even though my son has to, I'm pushing him, he has to work more and more harder. But with the overcrowding, with so many kids, and his teacher doesn't have enough attention to give it to him because there's no time, or he has to have help somebody else. I mean, if you want them to do good, and I want my son to excel and do good, I think the sizes should be much, much smaller so our kids can, reach the maximum potential. So, I mean, that's what I would like to say. And I don't think I'm only speaking for myself. Most of, my friends and the kids who going to Manor Haven, English, it is second language. So if you guys having, class sizes that big, I don't know. How they're gonna, reach the maximum potential. So I would really appreciate you guys to consider it and look at the eyes of our kids, and do good. I mean, we all want our kids to excel at school. Thank you.
Judy Epstein. I now have 2 kids who, thanks to programs I am going to praise here, are both in very good colleges. I'm going to give you a pep talk. There's some talk about should we cut back, or should you cut back on various enrichment programs for budgetary reasons. And I hope you've shredded that piece of paper like I did. I'm here to say class size, smaller class size is important to me as a taxpayer and a homeowner at every level, elementary, middle school, and the high school. And that I missed the enrichment program that was more aimed at all the kids in the school building, the push out or whatever the term of art is, when that got cut back. I think that's the cut I really minded the most. And I hope you bring it back better than ever. And just this thought about budgets. There's doing without and scrimping and saving the way my parents forced me and my brothers to do, because you're saving for something else, because you have a mission, because maybe there's a war effort. I'm not that old, but they were. Or because you want to be able to put your kids through college without a penny of college debt, or whatever is your priority. Saving up and doing without and saying we can't afford X, Y, and Z because of this, that's something everybody in a district, I think, should be able to get behind. But scrimping and saving and telling people we don't have money for this and we don't have money for that, just to get past catastrophe for another 12 months, that's different. That's really a rock I can't push up the hill. And I think that's the wrong way to approach it. And so finally, I'll leave you with a thought from Stephen Covey, who says, put the big rocks in first, then the gravel, then the sand, then the water. Put your priorities first. And don't say, do we have money for that? It's important, but do it first if it's important to you. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Bing Lawrence, and I have 2 kids in the Port School District. I'd like to say a few very brief words on the PEP program as well. I am concerned about, the potential of cutting the PEP program because, number one, we believe that this district has a need for it. Just like English as a second language, just like other special needs programs, this is in a way, another special needs kid group who deserve something, and I think we should keep it. Not only that, I think if you think the coverage for these kids are too narrow, we should expand it rather than cutting the remaining of it. So that's number one. And number two is I think it's the programs such as PEP that sets the school district apart versus every other school across the nation, and that's what makes Port Washington attractive to many parents here. And if we cut programs like that, I think we risk the reduction of property values, reduction that the school district go downward spiral, and as a result, I think we should look elsewhere in the budget. We want to balance the budget, but at the same time, we believe it's very important to keep programs like PEP. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Arlene Franco. I have a son in the 1st grade at Guggenheim and 2 daughters entering in the fall of 2018. Having grown up in Port Washington myself, I was very excited to raise my children in this beautiful town. I was shocked when I learned that my child was in a class with 25 students. Port Washington has a reputation for a wonderful school system. How can we expect our 5- and 6-year-olds to learn under these conditions? At this tender age, our children are excited to be in school. Homework is still exciting. I feel as though we are crushing the learning foundation of our eager children. How can we expect a teacher to teach 25 children? There is a cap in place, but I don't understand what the point of a cap is if we are going to ignore it. While my hope would be to magically enlarge the building and hire more teachers, I understand that this is not realistic. We have a TA that floats between our 1st grade classes and assists for 1 hour a day. 1 hour for 25 students. What I ask for is a full-time assistant in each of the classes of 1st grade if the class size must remain the same. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jamie Fernand, and I have a 1st grade student in Guggenheim Elementary. I have never been to a public board meeting like this before, but I am an education attorney. And as an education attorney, I understand FAPE, that every student has the right to a free and appropriate public education. And I think that everybody here has that same mission at heart. And reducing the class size is something that's paramount in achieving that goal. There is a cap of 23 students, as people have talked about, from K to 12. And as a lawyer, I look at that cap. And for me, when a cap is 23, I think that the cap is 23. And a 1 year, every year of allowing that cap to grow up makes it seem like the cap doesn't really matter at all. I do understand that this year, at least from my understanding, that Guggenheim is having students that come to at least their 1st grade and go to other school districts, other schools within the district. But I am concerned that for prospective families that are looking at property, it's hard for anybody selling the house to tell their prospective buyers what school their children are going to be attending. Further, as we talked about, if you can't increase the class size because there's not enough space in the building, it's my understanding there's enough space for 1 additional classroom, although 1st and 2nd grade both have too many students within it. And it's hard to ask a principal or any school leader to make a decision about whether or not it should be the 1st grade or the 2nd grade that gets that extra classroom if it's enlarged, if it's reduced. But it seems hard for me to believe that the answer is to not do either grade. It seems better to make the hard decision and figure out whether or not it's better to benefit the 1st graders or the 2nd graders than to just allow neither grade because you don't want to make other people unhappy. Further, if that can't be done, I echo Arlene's statement earlier and a lot of people's other before, having a TA in the classroom is important. It was my understanding that the TA was going to be in the classroom for 2 hours. I've heard conflicting information if that's 1 hour or 2 hours, but there's only 6 hours in a school day, and there's four first grade classes. So it's impossible that any TA is going to be able to be in a classroom for 8 hours where there's only 6 hours in a school day, so she can't possibly be doing that. I appreciate all the efforts that you make, and I respectfully ask the board to consider other alternatives, whether it's fundraising, asking the community directly to
30
possibly
seconds.
benefit, and use taxable donations to achieve this goal. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Barbara Cohen. I have a student at Schreiber High School. I'm here to speak about enrichment for all students in the district. I think we all have that as a goal. I think that we should be leading out with a discussion of what is the philosophy of the Port Washington schools and the Port Washington community when it comes to enriching education for all students, rather than lead out with a conversation about what our financial need is to cut a budget. I believe you framed the discussion incorrectly when you frame it that way. I want to call your attention to the fact that the School Superintendents Association in September of 15 has put out an entire issue of reports on gifted and talented education, including 5 model school districts in which the local Board of Education piloted unique programs that are closing the achievement gap between low-income and minority students and more high-income students. That material is available to all of us. We should also be surveying the local community to find out what enrichment programs are being offered, and we should be talking about how we improve the PEP program to reach all students in this district in a fiscally responsible way, not should we be having an enrichment program because of our finances. It's the wrong discussion. I would urge you to reconsider how you are framing the discussion and to take advantage of the materials that are there for you. Thank you very much.
Is my time on? Hi, my name is Aviva Parker. I have a 4th grade daughter at Daly who is in the PEP program. I have a kindergartner at Daly as well. I'd like to ask that before you consider cutting the PEP program, that you undertake an analysis of the impact of elementary and middle school enrichment programs on the later educational and economic success of our students here in the district. I'd like to know how the PEP students did on SAT, AP, ACT, and college admissions, and postgraduate income after college. These surveys could be undertaken before we take drastic measures to cut a program that so many parents feel is so valuable to this school district. I believe that if we cut PEP, you are racing to the bottom, and you will not have high-income taxpayers moving to this district. I moved here 5 years ago in part because of the schools, and particularly because a gifted program was in place. I would have thought hard about coming here if I had known that this program might be eliminated. I don't think we should be racing to the bottom. And I think the big elephant in this room is the tax cap. If in fact we cannot fund all of these programs that we think are so important, then the tax cap has to be revisited. I'm sure that if you told many of us, hey, the class sizes are going to be much smaller and we're going to have a full-time PEP, or at least the PEP that we have now, we'd all be willing to pay more. We wouldn't have a problem with it. If the budget isn't big enough, then we need to get more funding. And I personally do not have a problem paying higher taxes if it leads to my child having a better education. And I'll tell you that for many of these PEP students, PEP is the only part of the day that's even vaguely interesting, because our school teachers are in a position where they're teaching 25, 28 kids, and they have to teach to the middle. And some of the kids who are being left out are not just the kids at the bottom, but the kids at the top too. Because my daughter will do okay in a regular class. She won't be challenged, she won't be that interested, but she'll do okay. So her interests are not going to be met if a PEP program is cut.
30 seconds.
Let's do what we have to do to fund what we think are educational priorities for this school district. And please, 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 let's not race to the bottom. Thank you.
Jeff Winters. I have 2 children in Manor Haven School, one in first grade and one in second. I just want to start by saying you all have a very, very difficult job. You have to combine a balancing of budget with numbers, which I know are very, very important, and the bottom line, and at the same time deal with all of us who care about one thing more than anything in our lives, and that's our children. And it's a tough combination, and I imagine if you have children, you probably understand that more than we do, because maybe they've already gone through the system already. I'm going to be a broken record. Obviously, there are some short-term issues here with overpopulation in the school, and you're trying to fix it or have attempted to fix it, but we know that these issues are not going to stay short-term. They're going to continue to be long-term. And what I've noticed tonight, and it's a natural instinct, is for us to come up here and ask, and in some cases, I guess, passionately express what we want. And I couldn't disagree with anyone here tonight. I pretty much agree with all of them. But I wonder, and I don't know how long some of you have been on this board, but I wonder, after many years of hearing us, if maybe instead of us just demanding things or asking for things, maybe there's a different approach. And once again, I'm not too familiar with this process, but it seems instead of us just talking and you listening, maybe we have some more in-depth conversations when there's talking and listening on both sides. And I understand that this is an initial type of attempt to make our views known, but maybe there needs to be more of an interaction between the Board of Education and the parents. And that may need to be done with their councils or what so forth. So obviously tonight, I'm expressing the same concerns a lot of these other people are doing. And this isn't going to go away. I've only come tonight, and I know that there's probably been half another dozen times over the last couple of months that this has been expressed, but this is continually going to happen, where the people who have come to this town, who are here because of the education and the wonderful area to give our kids a better chance than a lot of unfortunate other children in this country have, is going to continue to grow. As the population continues to go up every year, this is going to become a bigger problem. So yes, there can be short-term fixes, but they're not going to solve things in the long run. And I'll just emphasize again, I think the main thing here tonight is, instead of me just talking and you listening, is to have a more in-depth personal conversation so we can understand where you're coming from and you can understand where we're coming from. Because right now, I just don't think this might be the most productive way. I understand this is the initial way that we have to have contact with you guys.
30 seconds.
I appreciate your time, and I hope you'll be able to reach out to some of us and maybe communicate a little more one-on-one as opposed to this forum that we have to initially start with. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dina Morrow. I have 3 children, 2 at Sousa, and the last one's coming up next year. And I am here to make a plea to keep PEP. PEP has been so stripped away through the years, and I feel like the conversation should be more about whether not to cut PEP, but how to expand it and help it grow. I believe that students in the district should get PEP more regularly. I think it needs to be known that the children in the core group are special needs children. They need this. PEP not only gives them enrichment, but it gives them a place to gather and to connect with other like-minded children who share in the same special needs. PEP blows life into these kids who otherwise are sometimes often withering in the classrooms. My son truly values PEP, and he sees it as the only good part of the school day. He gets so excited and rejuvenated every day that he has it, and it's pushed his thinking in ways that can't happen in the classroom. I beg you to give these children the services that they need, and I want to leave you with just a few words from him. I asked him what he likes the best about PEP, and he said that it's the only place that things are fun and challenging. He said, in PEP, you don't spend all the time going over things you already know. In PEP, you just get right to it, and it's all so interesting. Without PEP, school would be so dull and mostly and completely dull. Please reconsider your thoughts about getting rid of it.
Nanette Melconian. I have 3 children that have gone through the PEP program. First, thank you to the board for writing a letter to the Board of Regents against the new teacher evaluation proposal. Second, thank you to the district administration for modifying the PEP criteria to reflect a more comprehensive representation of our students. Third, please expand PEP. In this era of teachers being evaluated by student test scores, curriculum being narrowed to ELA and math, and instruction reduced to teaching to the test, now more than ever, we need to protect programs that support our teachers with resources to enrich classroom experiences, to nurture problem solving and out-of-the-box thinking for our children, and to meet the needs of our special needs core group students. We must fight corporate education reform and excessive testing with exactly the kind of programming that PEP has always provided. We need more PEP, not less. And finally, for parents and community members interested in learning about policies designed to underfund and undermine public schools from the gifted to the disabled, please visit the Facebook page, PW Advocates for Public Education. You too can help. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Bernadette Ford, and I have a son who's a senior at Schreiber, and in some ways that's a relief with having to deal with the tax cap, because I'm frankly feeling very pessimistic about things. But I'm here to speak about PEP and use him as one example, not just talking broadly that it's a great program, which it is. My son, when he was in first grade at Salem, was assigned reading support. If I knew now what I didn't know then, I probably would have fought it. But he internalized that he was a very poor student, that he was very stupid. And he kind of checked out between that and maybe the repetitiveness of the regular curriculum. Somehow his second and third grade teachers saw in him what he really has, which is a lot of talent. And I didn't know much about the PEP program. He's my only child. They saw that he was tested for it, and he went into the core group. And if it wasn't for that, he would not be performing the way that he is now. It changed his whole self-image as an academic person. He was challenged. He was fascinated by all of the activities. As everyone said, those were the days that he loved to go to school, and this was back when PEP was the full core PEP program. You know, after that, instead of considering himself stupid, you know, he spent 3 years doing Science Olympiad at Weber. He'll graduate with a tremendous SAT score, 6 AP courses, National Honor Society, and multiple varsity sports. That would not have happened. He would have checked out and not seen himself as somebody with academic potential except for the PEP program. So just taking one very specific example of how it can turn someone's life around, I'm begging you not to eliminate this program, or that kind of tragedy is going to happen to other students in the future. Thank you.
Allison White. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the League of Women Voters, so I'm not going to express my personal views on the issues that other people have come to discuss, but I suspect that all of you know what those are anyway. I would applaud all the people who have come tonight to participate in the democratic process, and I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. I also encourage you to come to a special program that the League is sponsoring called New York State Education Policy. How and by whom is education policy in New York State set? Are changes to the current system needed? We will be having 5 very important policy makers on this panel. It's Wednesday, October 21st at 7 p.m. I want to encourage all the board members and the administration to attend as well, and I hope that people will come to listen to what these policymakers have to say, and will come and ask them questions, because many of the issues that are being addressed in this room or get addressed in this room are directly impacted by the policies set from people above. The League is also having a candidates forum on Wednesday, October 14th at 5:30. That one is at the Ed Policy Program is at the Landmark on Main Street. The candidates forum is at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation. That's Wednesday, October 14th at 5:30, and there will be candidates debates between most of the candidates running for offices in the town of North Hempstead and in several Nassau County legislative districts, including the one in Port Washington. So I urge everybody to come out, and if you'd like a flyer, please let me know. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dana Rochester. I'm here speaking tonight about our disappointment at the prospect of losing PEP. I have 2 daughters in the 3rd grade at Daly, and my husband and I were excited about the opportunity for them to take part in the enrichment program this year. As a graduate myself of Hunter College High School in Manhattan, a school dedicated to providing an enriched education, I know firsthand the benefit that such an environment provides. My experiences there helped to make me the person and physician that I am today. I learned there how to be excited about learning. My daughters like 3rd grade, but when I ask them for specifics, they answer me that they're bored in class. What's their least favorite subject? Math. And they excel at math, but it's boring. And when I see the identical homework assignments that come home every day, I have to agree with them. It's boring. At a time when the Common Core curriculum has made it that much harder for our teachers to bring creativity and originality into the classroom, we should be looking for ways to add enrichment to our children's education, not to take it away. The PEP program is already a shadow of what it once was, and rather than being cut, should be expanded and made available to any student who wants to participate, especially in the current classroom environment where children who have different needs and different interests are forced to learn the same things the same way at the same time. We need to find a way to preserve and enhance the things that make us a strong school district, that make people want to move here, that allows our children to see that learning does not have to be boring, that challenges and excites them and makes them into lifelong learners. Thank you.
Good evening. George Borda, and I'm a member of the Compact Committee at Manor Haven. As per Board of Education Policy 2400, I'm here requesting that the Policy Committee of the Board of Education reviews Policy 4420, which deals with class size, so that it is amended to include an automatic trigger when class size reaches a set number by a set date. This way, the class is split into 2 sections. If class size increases after the set date, then an assistant teacher should be assigned. This is a standard practice in many school districts. It is the right thing to do for our children. The Board of Education should allocate the money now for the next school year. This would show a tremendous commitment of the board for ensuring a good standard of education to our students. And I hope you consider this and that we can discuss this at the Policy Committee. Thank you.
Rose Borda. This year, one of the goals of the Policy and Personnel Committee of the Board of Education is to develop a communication policy, including ConnectEd, website, emails, and other methods of reaching out to parents and community. I would like to discuss again the Aspen electronic gradebook as another way to reach out to parents. I believe this is the 2nd year Port Washington teachers are using Aspen Student Information System. Parents have the ability to log into the parent portal to access their child's attendance, quarter grades, progress reports, and final report card grades. But Aspen could be used for so much more at no greater cost to the district. My question to the board is why we're not taking the steps now to make Aspen an electronic gradebook a reality for next year. We can strengthen the homeschool connection if parents and students can view assignments, test grades, quiz grades, homework grades. If students can view their class average automatically whenever a new assignment or test grade is inputted using an app simply on their iPhone. Aspen Electronic Gradebook will create one system for parents, eliminating the need for multiple logins. When I've contacted the board about why we're not fully implementing the Aspen Gradebook, I received the following responses. It would mean we would have to negotiate with the teachers union. This is a contract year. You have a great opportunity to work with teachers this year so that this can be implemented for next school year. And when has negotiating with teachers' unions stopped districts from implementing what is right for students? Syosset Public Schools implemented the online electronic gradebook in 2009-10 school year. Jericho Public Schools has just made use of the electronic gradebook mandatory this school year. Thus, teachers in both school districts must post live all their assignments and grades for parents and students to view. In both school districts, administrators and teachers work together to make what is best for students happen. The second objection is that the implementation of any new system requires staff development. I emailed the Director of Technology in the Greenwich Public Schools, which currently uses Aspen and the Aspen electronic gradebook. In response to my questions, she writes, Aspen provided the original training for gradebook, and we have experts in each school to assist with any problems, as well as provide training for new teachers. I do not recall exactly how many hours of professional development were devoted to the gradebook. My recollection is that
30 seconds.
There were 2 one-hour sessions. The main difficulty that we had in teachers moving to Aspen and the gradebook was their reluctance to give up what they were doing previously. Our original student gradebook system was star-based, and it had a terrible gradebook. Teachers began using any gradebook. That was a real mess, and we wanted to make sure that all teachers used the gradebook in Aspen. And the fact that they do, we have never regretted the decision. So my question to you is, why can't we, the families of Port Washington, have the same information, access to the same information that the families at Jericho have access to?
Sorry, I have to cut you off here.
Syosset. Thank you.
Hi, how are you? I'm Liz Sobel. I have a kindergartner who just started at Manor Haven, and I want to reiterate what everyone here has said tonight about the overcrowding issues, but I also want to underscore the importance of not cutting the enrichment programs. My husband would be here tonight if he could, but he was a graduate of Sousa, Weber, and Schreiber High School, and in his senior class, he was one of 28 students who went to Ivy League colleges, and that was entirely because of the enrichment programs that began at a very early age. I think if we lose the ability to have the enrichment programs here, we lose the ability to deliver excellent education for the children who are ready for it. It's why people moved to this town. It's why we moved to this town, why we came back. The big selling point to me was because of the amazing schools here. And so I would just like, again, to urge you to reconsider cutting enrichment programs. Thank you.
Hi, folks. Dave Sattinger. First, it was 4 or 5 years ago that I stood before you, and PEP was on the chopping block. And my number one comment to you was, if we're going to support enrichment, what you don't do is pull money out of the budget now, because you're never going to put it back. At that time, we were promised, we're going to really give you a full enrichment program. And here we are years later, and now the rest of PEP is on the chopping block. And I look at our reputation compared to other school districts that we love to compare ourselves to, and we find ourselves floundering. We're losing the race. So the question becomes, when do we reevaluate and reassess what we're doing? Because we're becoming the muddle in the middle, and our kids deserve much better than that. I'd like to thank Ms. McLean, who I think is in attendance tonight, because my son was in PEP, and if it wasn't for the PEP program, I really don't know where he would be today. Luckily today he is in 8th grade, taking 9th grade algebra, taking earth science and accelerated art, and I am so thankful for that program. To cut it without putting forth a viable option of enrichment is just absurd. The real question becomes, where are we leading? What kind of leadership are we providing for the children of Port Washington? We must do better, you must do better, and it is time to reevaluate and reassess everything that we're doing, including class sizes. And if it's required, it's time to redraw the lines a little bit. I know that some parents wouldn't want to have one child in one school and one in another, but if that's the way we need to meet the class size needs, that's what we need to do. So it's time to focus, make our priorities better. I urge you to do it. The chorus has been loud and clear tonight on enrichment, and it's time that we give the community best and brightest
30 seconds.
their opportunity to shine. Thank you.
There are no other community comments at this time. We will close out and move on with our agenda. I would just like to make a few comments. We have made no decisions regarding any programs. We'll be holding our first meeting on the matter on Friday morning, this Friday morning at 8:15, I believe, in the Daily Annex. We invite all of you to attend. And that speaks to the comments from someone about this being not the best forum to have conversations. And I agree, it's not, but it's now 9 o'clock and we're first going forward with our agenda and we have a lot of other work to do. So we've had a long history of wanting to hear any input here and invite the community to come here to speak, but it isn't the place for conversations. That would be at the committee meetings. It would be reaching out to your HSA and PTA presidents. We have never been invited to come to speak to a school and decline. If there's a matter that a school or the community wants at large, we've had town forums, we'll go to parent council. We pretty much go wherever we're invited. So if there is a matter that people want to discuss, then please reach out to us through those presidents, because that is the best way to facilitate anything. We look forward to finding out what our tax cap will be this year, and then thinking about whether or not we need to have a community forum. And I urge all of you to remember that as many of you are in this room saying perhaps you would pierce the tax cap, there's 3 times that many, at least, out in the community saying that they wouldn't, that they already pay for too much and they don't want the taxes to be as high as they are now. And we have to speak to the entire community because the entire community votes. And the tax cap has to be voted in by a supermajority, which is 60%. We have not reached that in the past few years without even having that kind of vote. So if it's something we're going to look into, because I'm sure all of you have heard the possibility of our tax cap number being very low, it's something we will have to discuss with the whole community, and I urge you all to be there and know that there are so many points of view in this community. It's a wonderful thing. It's why I think all of us moved here, but really for every opinion, there's another opinion and another opinion and another opinion. And every one of those opinions, they hold a vote. And they go to the voting booth in May and they cast their vote, and we have to consider that. So all of the issues you raised tonight, that is focused on the budget. It's a reality and it's something we have to look at, but we are going slowly and carefully and looking at everything, and we appreciate your coming here tonight to speak to us. So with that said, one other thing, the class sizes for next year. Someone had reached out to me already to ask about that, and I just wanted to speak to it. It is something we are already looking at, trying to figure out where to go from here. We realize the class sizes are too big, but aside from financial considerations, we have spatial considerations, and we are looking into all possibilities of what we can do. If everything remained the same next year, if we just had to add those 1 or 2 teachers or 1 or 2 sections, then we would work to do that. But everything won't be the same next year because the 5th grade will leave the elementary schools and new kindergartens will come in, and we don't know the sizes of those kindergartens for sure. We don't know the number of move-ins in the different grades. So there's a lot to consider, but we will be discussing it throughout the year, and we certainly will share all of that with you as we proceed. So thank you, and I will now turn it over to the superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start with a few positive things. First of all, I want to thank everyone who participated in Pride in Port. For those of you who don't know, that's also our homecoming. I am very proud to say that our Vikings won the homecoming game this year, and we should be very proud of them for that. They worked very hard, our football team, our cheerleaders, our Portettes, the band, everyone who's so actively involved. All the schools participate in the Pride in Port Parade. It's a wonderful, wonderful day. This year was no exception, and so really, really excited that it was a great day. We also, at our next board meeting, we will be honoring with certificates of excellence our 5 National Merit semifinalists, which is great. So we always have wonderful things to speak about with our students. There's a couple of issues that I would like to address and reassure our parents about regarding student safety and health issues. I know some of you got notification of an issue at Weber. There is no risk to staff or students. I want to be very clear and firm about that. We took an overabundance of caution, as we should, in dealing with that particular issue, and we will certainly keep people apprised, but we are very confident that the building is safe and that our students are all in a great place for learning. In addition, we are going to be hearing an update on the bond tonight in terms of the planning process, and one of the issues that will be discussed are the synthetic fields and the infill, because there are some potential health concerns regarding that aspect of turf fields that we have, as a board and administration, been taking extremely seriously. And just to add on to Mrs. Sloan's comments about no decisions have been made regarding programming for next year's budget, no decisions have been made regarding the infill for the turf fields as well. We are in information fact-finding process. It's a very important process. Again, these are all things that we take very seriously because we do take our charge to keep our students safe, healthy, and provided with the strongest educational programs. That is really what we do, and that's why we're here. And our Board of Education volunteers many, many hours of their time and dedicated to these discussions and ultimately decisions. So we have a very busy year ahead of us. As Mrs. Sloan mentioned, the meeting on Friday regarding the PEP program, it is a conversation, it is a dialogue, it is a bringing together of the issues regarding the philosophy, the educational value, of course, of the program, and how we can work that through with our budgetary issues. Our budgetary issues are also a very serious matter for our school district. We don't want to just maintain what we have, we want to expand as well. And we have some very, very serious financial limitations that we are facing in order to do that. But we also believe that we are problem solvers, that we work collaboratively, and that together we can come up with resolutions to do what's right and best for our students. And we do share that common ground. I hope everyone can really appreciate that. Just very briefly, I'm going to ask Ms. Fennick to go through the enrollment report, and then we'll move on to our presentation.
Dr. Mooney. As of September 30th, we have 5,456 students in the district. We have 111 more students than we did last year at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for the approval of the minutes for September 8th and September 22nd, 2015. Do we have a second? Ms. Johnson, all in favor? 7-0, thank you. We will now move to our discussion item, which will be our architects for the district. And I just want to reiterate one more time, no decision has been made on the turf infill. I hope everyone has heard us. We've had 2 meetings through our committee. This is our meeting with our architects and our public evening committee, and we will be holding future meetings at the committee level with other consultants. Thank you. Roger Smith.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you tonight. Nice not to see you tonight. We have a couple of presentations to you, and again, thank you for having us. The first is just to give you an update. Frank Giacchetto, my lead architect in the district, is with me in case you have more specifics, but really, this is an update of all of the work that we have been doing over the past several months since the bond referendum passed. And this is really the information and design effort that's been happening and the projects that are in phase one. Let me just reiterate the process that we go through at this time with you. You passed the bond referendum on March 10th. What happens after that? A letter of intent is sent to the State Education Department for every project that you're proceeding ahead with, and the State Education Department issues a project number based upon that letter of intent. We then design the projects, which is done in conjunction with you, and I'll address that in a few minutes. After they're designed and prepared into construction documents, they go from different levels of design. We call it schematic and design development into construction documents. We submit them to the State Education Department for permits. Just again, your permit to construct your building permit comes from Albany, not from a local entity. When the State Education Department approves it, it issues a permit. After we have the permit, we are allowed to go out to bid on your behalf, and that's a public bid, as you know. After that public bid, the Board of Education can review those bids with us and award the project. Then the project's construction is scheduled to be done, and at some point during that, your business office will take a look at how these projects are moving ahead and look at how they will be financed, and more typically the discussion that we had pre-bond with bands and then into bonds at a later date. So really this sounds like it's going to go really quick, and it doesn't. It takes an awful lot of time. But here's phase one. This is what we have been doing over all of these months. The science rooms for both the high school and middle school were designed with my staff and your staff, your actual staff and educators in the science departments at the middle school and high school in May and June throughout those 2 entire months so that we would get their input and understand what they were looking for in the classroom. We submitted our construction documents for permits in August for the high school and for the middle school in September. So, and one of the things I just want to also give you a sense is we set these schedules, if you remember, pre-bond, and we are still proceeding ahead on the schedule we set, which is, I think, pretty good. Actually, I'm quite pleased, and also pleased that we are getting such great cooperation from your staff as well. The high school auditorium renovation, we are finalizing our final documents. We've also met with your departments who utilize this space. We anticipate scheduling that before the end of this month, again on schedule. One of the other pieces of phase one is the high school fields and the window replacement. And some of this is also about how you package projects. If the board remembers, I discussed how you package projects to get permits at State Education Department. Anything that has mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, ergo the science rooms, will have the longest duration of time for permitting, and right now that's at about 42 weeks from the time of submission. When we have a project like the high school fields and window replacement, there isn't mechanical, electrical, and plumbing work, and that will go up and be reviewed in a shorter time frame because the staff at State Ed is larger in that department and able to review these faster. We are scheduled to submit those in December. We really are, and as it, in just a discussion that the board president mentioned a moment ago, we are finalizing our documents for SED submittal, but the discussion, we're going to have further discussion tonight with you on the infill, and that does not finalize that discussion for you even upon submission because we often take alternative bids on infill, and we'll discuss that with you. It's quite an interesting topic. The Manor Haven roof was filed with the State Ed on October 1st. And the administration roof has already been bid and awarded, and I believe it's starting work within the next couple of days. The phase two work is a lot more coming. We are getting ready and started a lot of this. At Weber Middle School, we are starting our interior renovations for the auditorium design. which we have worked through again with staff and has been approved at this point by the district. We are developing the design for the air conditioning at the same auditorium. We are designing locker rooms, which we, again, when we put approved by the district, I just want you to know that we're not just doing this in a vacuum, and I think that's very important. Toilet plans, where we're renovating your district-wide toilets, have been developed. We are also developing the security vestibule design with the district's administration, your building principals. This is a topic that's going to happen in each and every building as part of our design efforts. It is important to us, and I'm just mentioning because you're going to see that come up a number of times, but really it requires a little bit more investigation because it changes how you will utilize the structure a little bit. In the high school, the locker room renovations have been developed and designed, and we may want to tie those with the science room renovations, which are part of the next submission, because in essence, this is work over each other. So it makes little sense for us sometimes, even though we want to take some things and get them done, to have to take the ceiling out of something that we've just put in to be able to renovate the science room above. This is the kind of coordination we go through the process, and I just wanted you to make you aware of that because it's not just, again, design in a vacuum. There's more in phase 2 at Guggenheim. We've started some of those interior renovations, the accordion door replacement, the exterior door replacement designs, staff and student toilets have been designed, the main entry storefront, and again, the security vestibule and discussion. We are scheduled to submit our district-wide camera project around December, and we feel comfortable with that so far. And again, district-wide security on vestibules is all moving ahead to a submission in December. That is the amount of work that we have been accomplishing. It's an enormous amount of effort and that's not to make it seem like it's a yoke that we can't carry. It really has to do with the way we're scheduling the work and keeping it up and keeping it on schedule. And again, thank you, because we've been able to do that with you in great concert. If you don't have questions on this, what we could do is just move right to the next presentation if that's what you'd like to do. Yes. Okay. I'm going to give a little overview to this. Also with us tonight with my firm is Kurt Coronado, who's our landscape architect. And Kurt handles many of the synthetic turf projects that we do, as well as many of the design projects that we do that have to do around the buildings that we design. As a firm, I think we've done over 50 synthetic fields, and I think we've just completed almost another 7 to 10 in the past 12 months. There has been discussion with the district. This is a constant topic. I want to make you feel a level of comfort as a community and an administration and Board of Education. This is a topic that we are absolutely in front of, on top of, and with our clients on a regular basis. I think this presentation has rolled itself out about 3 times in the past 3 weeks, because one of the biggest topics of discussion in doing synthetic fields has become the infill product. And again, we can, and Kurt will take you through the different types of infill product and what we know about those today and what is understood. And we set these projects up that the turf, the grass, the blades of grass can accept different kinds of infill. And so that decision, we're not looking for a decision tonight. We are looking to help inform you about what's available, let the community know that you are aware of it and we are aware of it, and at the same time start to look forward to how those decisions will be reached in the next several months. I hope so.
Thank you for inviting us tonight to discuss the synthetic turf fields. And what I'm going to try to do is give you a general overview of what synthetic turf is, and then we'll talk a little bit about the product and the infills. Basically, synthetic turf, this is a cross-section here showing basically a cross-section of the turf and also something from Field Turf where they describe what's in the turf. So what you basically have is a carpet with approximately 2 to 2.5 inch long plastic fibers that make up the grass. And then you have different infill products that can go in there. What this one is showing is a rubber and sand infill product, which is what is used on the majority of the fields that we've done, probably about 95% of them, and probably about 95% of the fields on Long Island have the rubber infill mixed with sand. The sand basically is in there to provide weight to hold down the carpet, and the rubber is basically in there to provide safety and playability to the turf. So what we need to consider with the infill is the rubber or the infill that goes in there is what's providing the safety on the field, what's providing the playability and also the safety to the players on the field. Besides the grass itself and the infill, below that you have a filter fabric and then a crushed stone, usually approximately 6 inches deep. We could call it gravel here, but it's actually a manufactured crushed stone that not only provides a base for the turf itself, but also provides drainage for the turf to allow it to drain fast enough so we can play on it when it's raining or right after a large rainstorm. That is basically put on top of the subgrade, so what we need to do before we do that is remove the topsoil and any material that's not a good base for the field to be on. So you may be removing up to 9 to 12 inches of material before you start building up the base for the synthetic turf. This is just a manufacturer's spec sheet, but a lot goes into the turf, how they make the carpet, what the backing of the carpet is. The different fibers that make up the grass can come in different ways. You can have one grass blade coming up, or you can have several. Some of them have other things built into the carpet that help hold the rubber and the sand in, and so it doesn't splash out of the turf. The big thing here that I highlighted was the infill needs to meet certain tests for GMAX, which is similar to what you have on a children's playground. They do a drop test on it, and it has to meet a certain standard for safety for when a child or player falls on the turf, that rubber or that infill product is going to make it safe when they fall. There are several other performance guidelines that the infill and the turf needs to meet. So I think what I'm trying to say here is you can't just put anything into the turf. It needs to meet certain specifications, not only for the GMAX and the safety, but also for how the ball rolls on it, how the ball bounces, and how the field plays. And I'm not going to go through each one of these, but I'm just trying to show you that we need to meet a bunch of different specifications, and it's not just putting a carpet down on the field to play football or other sports on. Some of the other performance guidelines here. There are several different infill materials that we can put into the field to provide the playability and the safety factor for the synthetic turf. Crumb rubber, the one that you've probably heard a lot about, is SBR rubber, which is recycled tires. That is used in the majority of fields across the country and on Long Island. I think I said about 95%. Basically, it's a mixture of sand, which is for the weight, and the rubber goes on top of that, and it's installed on the field in layers and built up to approximately about a 2-inch depth. The next one down is a coated rubber infill. This sometimes you might hear called as cool fill. It's basically the SBR rubber particles that are encapsulated with another product that kind of holds the rubber together a little better. It also has a color to it, which reduces the heat in the field on hot days. There's an EPDM infill. We've never done any fields with this. That's basically more of a virgin manufactured product, which is partially plastic, partially rubber. The manufacturing process of EPDM makes it difficult to find, and you don't see it used very much. And also, if it's not manufactured the proper way, that there can be issues with it down the road. Organic infill is a newer product that's come out. It's used a lot in Europe. It's beginning to be used in the United States. It's basically either cork or coconut, parts of coconut husks mixed with some other materials. It's a natural material. It's also usually installed with sand because, once again, the sand provides the weight to hold the grass down. The organic infill requires more maintenance than the rubber or plastic infills because it needs to have a certain moisture content to provide the safety. So you need an irrigation system with it. It needs to be watered to keep the proper moisture level in it. Also needs to be replaced more often because it breaks down almost like dirt. Gets a little dusty and things like that. They're improving on the product as we go along because it's being used more, but the track record of it is not really there yet, so we don't know how it's going to last over a 10-year warranty of the field. Although, whether you get the organic infill or the rubber infill, you'll have the same warranty. But I just want everybody to know that there will be more maintenance with the organic infill. Some of these others are listed, but usually not used unless you have a certain type of field where maybe you only play baseball on the field or you only play field hockey on the field. Sometimes they can use a coated sand or other type of infill material, and you'll have a harder field that'll allow those type of balls to roll on the field better. This is another one here, the coated silica sand. One thing that I didn't mention with some of these infill products like organic infill and some of the sand products, you also need to install a pad underneath the field, basically a cushion underneath the synthetic turf itself. So that would go on top of the gravel, and then the turf would go on top of that pad. That's an extra expense, and that provides really the safety measure for falling on the field so it can pass that GMAX test. Because the rubber is no longer in there, and the organic material and some of these other materials don't provide the cushion, so you need that extra cushion under the field. TPE is another manufactured product that has been used before. It's also very hard to find and hard to manufacture properly. There have been issues with it melting on hop fields when it wasn't manufactured correctly, so we don't have a real track record with that also. And then there's others that they're looking into, hybrids, different mixtures of sand and other things that we're keeping up with. And we basically have a library back in our office of all these different materials and where they're being used and how often they've been installed, as well as all of the reports on the safety of the chrome rubber. We pretty much have been up to date on all of that. We stay up to date on a daily basis, and we can answer your questions when we get to that point. These are just some of how those other infill materials look. You see the cool fill or the colored rubber is the second one down on the left. The pure fill is a cork material, which is sometimes installed on top of the rubber to make it cooler. And you have the EPDM and the EnviroFill. These are all different mixtures. One there that we didn't mention is Nike Grind, which is basically ground up recycled Nike sneakers and also parts of the sneakers that aren't used as part of the manufacturing product. That one's also being used in some places, but they don't manufacture a lot of that product, so they've only had enough to install approximately 10 fields across the whole country with that per year. There is a cost increase on the different infill materials besides the SBR rubber. So whichever infill material is picked, there's a cost increase basically on top of what the rubber would have cost. The organic we're finding is approximately $300,000 to $400,000 more. And that would cover the pad that you need, the additional cost of the material, which is imported from either India or that area, and also the irrigation system that you'll need to put in to keep it moist. All of the other products have different cost increases. The Cool Fill, which is a Sprint Turf product, is approximately $80,000 for a typical field. Your fields are really a different shape and size, so we'd have to look at exactly the cost increase for those size fields. EPDM and some of the manufactured plastic products can run up to $300,000 additional cost over the rubber. The biggest reason for that is just because these products aren't manufactured in great quantity like the rubber is, so it's harder to get. And there's fields across the country that are looking to use it, and they just can't make enough. So that's the biggest reason for the cost. Just some numbers here of how much additional some of these products are for organic, $225 to $400. That also includes, like I said, your pad and your irrigation system, TP, EPDM, Nike grind, approximately 120. But like I said before, that's very, very difficult to get. So there may be a longer lead time. If you had a field with Nike grind, you may have to wait longer until that type of fill is ready. One other thing I'd like to add before I finish up is based on the type of infill that you get, you may get a different type of grass product or a different type of carpet. It may have a little bit of a shorter pile or a longer pile depending on the infill material that you have. So it's not only making a choice of the infill, but what changes do you need to make to the turf to properly have that infill for the playability and the safety of the field. This is the Sprint Turf Cool Fill product, which we talked about before, and basically that's an encapsulated SBR rubber that is colored either green or tan, and that's what reduces the heat coming off the black rubber. This is an aerial photograph of the school, and it shows, it's kind of hard to read, but we're doing the baseball field, which is to the right-hand side of the track area, and we're doing the upper field in the back of the school there, which will be a practice field. But I'll move, since you really can't read that, I'll move on here. That one's kind of hard to read either, but I'm sure these will be posted and you'll be able to look at them on the website. The main field here is going to be a multi-purpose for baseball and also for a 330-foot by 195-foot multi-purpose field, which could be used for lacrosse, field hockey, and all the other sports besides baseball, when there's not a baseball game going on, of course. The upper field is going to be a softball field and a practice field for multi-purpose sports. It's a smaller field, 270 long by 165 foot wide, and large enough for a softball with a 220-foot outfield. This just shows, I just wanted to get into the drainage underneath the field. There's an extensive drainage system that goes on underneath the synthetic turf field with pipes around the perimeter that help get the water quickly off the field in a rainstorm, and we'll deliver it to leaching pools or drainage systems that we install outside of the field area. And that's just giving you an idea of the pipes and the way that they're going to run on your field. We have this on the design boards right now in the office, and we're working on this design. And I think that's all we have on the turf for now. If anybody has any questions. You guys want to add anything else?
See what they have.
Thank you very much for coming tonight and your presentation. First, I just want to clarify, in the Phase 1, the administration roof, we had some back and forth about that amongst ourselves lately, so I just want to clarify for the community, that's not in the bond.
Yes, outside the bond.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
That's okay. I just, for the record, want it out there.
Sorry.
It's being done, so it's great to include it, but how it's being financed is important. As for the fields, we have been doing our homework. We've had some presentations, so I don't have a lot of questions about the different infill types, but is it true is there only one field on Long Island that is being done with the coconut husk right now?
We know of two.
they're not completed,
No.
so we don't know how they're holding up even anything about anything really
No,
yet.
we are not the architects or engineers for one, and we are the engineers for the other. And that is in construction, and the fill, if you saw me leave the room tonight, that Board of Education, while we're in construction, is still throwing quarters in the air, trying to determine what they're going to use. That's not making the architect standing in front of you very relaxed, or the contractor building the field, but it's a constant discussion right to the last minute.
Roger, thank you. Just a couple questions. Just going back first to the bond slide.
Yep.
When you look at phase one and the timing, you said in your presentation that it's somewhat structured and sort of laid out based on 42 weeks for mechanical and things like that. When we get to the field section, since that's what then the next presentation is about, is that then really 12 to 16 weeks?
It could be, yes. Windows and fields could absolutely be in 12 to 16 weeks.
Okay.
We, as you remember, I think we kind of plotted this out to see if we couldn't get that work accomplished in the summer of 16.
Right.
And
Okay.
we're thinking we'll still be okay.
I just wanted to make
Yes.
sure. Well, one of the interesting ones that came up that really wasn't discussed in the two presentations, to the extent that you presented it tonight as a fill, was the sand, which was interesting in that we sort of went through it very quickly, but you presented that we could use a total sand field which would be, have no tires in it, so to speak, would not be the organic material with the extra watering and things like that. I understand that it's more expensive and you have to put the pad under it, but is anybody using that, and what's the playability of that versus the crumb rubber?
That infill material is only usually used for a specialized field. For instance, a field that only field hockey plays on, or only a certain sport plays on, because it doesn't really have the cushioning or the playability to have a multi-sport field.
Right, but when you look at the side field, for example, or what you labeled the baseball field in your picture, we're planning to play baseball. The upper field will be used for softball. Then we're going to play at some point field hockey, either up or down, depending on how that lays out. And then ultimately you would be soccer perhaps and lacrosse, but I don't know structurally if really that's where the games are going to be played or they're going to be used as practice fields. We're not going to play football there per se. That's always going to stay either on the field inside the track or down in what I still refer to as the pit. Does that then change the type of fill we might consider for that field if we're really going to play, let's call it rolling ball sports on those fields, be it lacrosse, soccer, baseball, and field hockey?
It may, but I really think it would be mostly more for a field that's only used for, something like field hockey, and you're not going to play any other sports on it, or you're not going to allow the community to come in and use it for multi-purpose sports. I'm not sure how the sand would work on that. Sand is an option. We'd have to look in to see how sand would work, for playing more than just one type of sport.
I'd just be interested then to know who else or what other district might have done that, or if that field's in play anywhere for what that field may entail.
I can find that out for you. It's nowhere on Long Island, but I know there have been some sand fields installed.
Okay.
At colleges and universities that just use it for a certain sport.
It would just be interesting as a reference point, just again because it's organic in a sense in nature and doesn't contain any of the other stuff. The costs are similar between that and an organic infill, and might just provide us with a different option.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thanks.
I believe yesterday during the presentation, they did discuss sand fields, and they said that you'd be better off playing on a beach, that it's not a good playing field.
It wasn't resilient enough.
Yeah.
Well, but that was the interesting part. I guess we're supposed to use microphones. As it's been laid out here about particular sports functioning on that field. And so that wasn't really the discussion in yesterday morning. And in general, I find that a lot of the discussion takes place around playing football and crashing onto the field and the G-max force of that. Everybody else does fall on the field, yes, and baseball players are diving and there's a whole bunch of other stuff. But in general, the sense I've gathered in listening to everybody is the overriding discussion point tends to be football first and how the field's going to play. A lot of the samples in all the brochures that we looked at were always of football stadiums. And it was very rarely presented that we built this baseball field at the University of Miami and used this infill or infill material, and it's turf there as well. And so I'm just interested to know a little bit more about that, because this field in particular will not be a football field. It's just not what it's going to be there for. Stephanie may yell at me for that, but the original design of it really wasn't for football. It's for all the other, as I call it, more rolling ball sports than anything else.
We'll see if we can find out where the sand fields are and what exactly that they're used for and the safety factor with them.
Hi, thanks. Kurt, what's your last name? I'm sorry.
Coronado.
Hi. You are an independent, landscape architect. You don't work for a specific company or anything, correct? Well, no, a specific turf company, I should say. No. What's flex sand? Do you know? Yeah. On the thing from Sprint Turf, since Alan brought it up yesterday, I just noticed 2 fields that use flex sand, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I think that's basically like an encapsulated manufactured sand. Well, they'll look at certain sand particles that they want, they round them off, and they're kind of encapsulated. And they're basically used as the weight under the field. Usually another product is installed on top of them.
Okay.
So, and most synthetic turf infill materials that we use have sand in the mixture. It's a certain percentage of sand and a certain percentage of either rubber or whatever other infill material that you have.
All right. I'm sorry. Well, these two showed 2 fields that say flex sand, that's it. So it doesn't show any other infill, one in Ohio, one's in Pennsylvania. So, field trip? No, I'm kidding.
A lot of it has to do with you want the sand to be smooth so it doesn't wear out the grass. And that's a big concern with the sand. With the players running on top of it, the sand tends to, rub up against the grass and wear the grass out a lot quicker.
I just had, as far as, and I'm sorry for asking this question, how do you maintain a pristine grass field that you have sports played on it every single day?
Lots of rest would be the number one thing. Basically, to keep a grass field in pristine condition, almost like a professional stadium, you can only play a certain amount of hours on it per season. For instance, in the fall, maybe you can have 15 games, and in the spring, maybe you can have 15 games. Then you need to rest the field, you need to plant new grass, top dress, overseed it, let the grass grow, and you can't play on it after it rains because that'll rip it up, and so a lot of downtime, I would say, is what you need to do that, along with irrigation and fertilizer and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you. As far as injuries, I know that one of the things that are talked about is injuries with turf fields. As a landscape architect that looks at schools, do you have any information that shows one has more injuries than the other, grass field or turf field?
I don't have any information that shows that. I know there's been some studies done, but a lot of the injury information that you hear about synthetic turf goes back to the old type of synthetic turf that used to be a carpet basically on top of concrete or asphalt, And the newer type of synthetic turf, which is the modern type that we're using now with the infill products, with either rubber or organic or whatever we're using, I would say, in my own experience of playing on these fields, and my children play on the fields, is some of the natural grass fields out there at schools that my kids play on are very dangerous because there's either no grass or there's ruts in the fields, or especially in front of the goals and across the field. And with a synthetic turf field, you have a consistent surface throughout, and with a little bit of maintenance on it, which you do have to do no matter what kind of synthetic turf you get, I believe it's to be a safer field to play on than a lot of natural grass fields that aren't in pristine condition, because there's too much use on the fields, and it's impossible to keep the natural grass fields in the condition that they could be in if you've never played on them, and that's a problem because everybody wants to play on the field. So.
Also, and I don't know if you can speak to this as far as like germs, such as when someone bleeds on a turf field or vomits or anything else like that. Do you know of anything that creates an increased risk of infection based on any type of injury that happens on turf fields?
Not that I know of, but I kind of look at them as the same thing happens on a natural grass field. If somebody is bleeding or if somebody throws up, it goes into the natural grass and ends up in the dirt. When it rains, it washes away. Same thing with a synthetic turf system. If that happens, the rain comes, it washes away. Just like it would happen with a natural grass field, pretty much the same as a synthetic turf field.
The premise that someone had commented to us is that because there is no dirt, so that it doesn't wash away into the dirt if there is that kind of bodily fluid on a synthetic turf field, that it doesn't get washed away. And you're saying that's not
It actually does get washed away. It washes, the fields are actually designed to let water run through the turf very quickly into the sub-drainage system, which is 6 inches of gravel, we'll call it, even though it's not really gravel. And then it has an under-drain system underneath that. So anything that falls into the rubber when it rains is going to wash down into the gravel and then get into the drainage system, just like it would in a natural turf field.
Mrs. Johnson was just commenting, what about the mat? If there's a mat, how would that would...
The mat is also designed to drain. The mat has drainage capabilities to let the water run through it to get into the drainage system. And that's one of the biggest design things they've come up with these fields, is to make them drain very quickly so you can play on it while it's raining or right after a rain. You don't have to let it rest. So I would say, that being said, that it'll probably drain through there and clean itself out even quicker than a natural grass field where you have compacted dirt that it has a tough time getting into. There's also ways you can disinfect the field if there's a serious issue. You're going to have maintenance equipment with the turf fields that you can use, and there's disinfectants that you can put on to disinfect the field every, maybe once a year, or however much is needed depending on the use of the field.
So in your experience thus far, if you were to put a turf field in your backyard, what infill would you put in?
I wish I could afford it, but I would use the rubber field, the rubber infill for my field, because the fields have been designed, and the whole design of these fields has been based on the rubber and sand infill. The fields have been designed that way, the turf's been designed that way, and not that the new infills are not going to work, but the fields haven't been designed for these new infills, so they're kind of like learning as they go along here. I would want to go with a product that's been tested and true, and I know the track record on it.
So like just a regular crumb rubber infill, you'd be okay with putting in your backyard. The cool fill, which one of the arguments with turf fields lately, on top of the chemical issue, is that they get very hot. So something that drops the temperature 15% or 20% on a field seems to be somewhat of a plus for me. Do you feel that that would be a difference, worth the cost difference in that? And then have you heard any problems with the coating that's on the cool fill breaking down?
I think it's a good thing to reduce the heat. I think probably most of the days when you'd have heat like that on the fields, the kids wouldn't be practicing anyway. It'd probably be like in the August when they're having practice, getting ready for the season, or maybe at the end of the spring season, when you have a few days that the field gets a little too hot. I think whether it was natural grass or synthetic turf, you might not be playing those days anyway because of the heat. We had heard about the problem with the coated rubber. There was an issue, I think, at one school district or two school districts, but that was part of the manufacturing process of the coating. They've now come up with a improved way to manufacture that where they double encapsulate, and they haven't had that issue again. We recently installed 5 fields at Belmore Merrick with that product, and it would probably behoove you to speak to them to see how it's working out, but I haven't heard any problems like that from them.
Thanks. Couple of questions. Are you familiar at all with East Meadow, who have natural grass fields?
I'm familiar with East
sorry.
Meadow. But
I just want to interrupt you a second. It's the East Meadow Park District, not the schools.
Okay, so they're not used every day then? Okay, so we'll get rid of that one. Another question, in your cost analysis, you say that EnviroFill is 22 cents a pound, which makes it 2 cents more than rubber, but yet when you go into the landed cost, you show it as $2.75 per square foot, which means you're paying $2.53 per foot for the pad. But if you look at the organic stuff, which starts out at 94 cents a foot, you're only going up to $1.75 per square foot, so you're only spending 79 cents per foot on the pad. Is the pad cheaper with an organic fill than it is with the EnviroFill?
No, but what happens is there's different mixtures. So it's when you look at the pounds per square foot costs, for different products, there's different mixtures. So you may have more of one thing and less of a certain thing, and more pounds to hold the turf down. So it's hard to do that comparison. I know we have it in there, but I think we were just trying to show that there is a cost difference between all the different type of infills.
Right, but you're saying the organic is actually cheaper landed than the EnviroFill, even though it's a lot more expensive to buy.
I'm not sure of that.
And we would prefer that you utilize, even though we show the per pounds numbers, the prices that we have given you on the next slide address what were the price per field, which is a more accurate depiction. Let me give you a great example. If no organic field, or very few have even been bid, publicly bid, then it is difficult to really get the marketplace cost for that. We have bid one of those, and we have that cost. So I am going to negate on your behalf whatever we said per pound and say the price that we've got in the last bid is the price that's presently on the street that's usable. And that's what's most important.
Okay, but so then in here, in your cost per field, organic can be as low as $215,000 extra per field, but the EnviroFill is $261,000 for a field. So the organic solution could be less expensive than some of the synthetic solutions.
Perhaps.
Excuse me, but with the organics, then don't we have to add in the cost of irrigation?
We have, it's such a mixed, and I don't mean to jump in here, but this is way over out of my league too, but this part I know. Because we bid this project very recently. The cost of the infill, organic infill, is one component. The irrigation, or how you make that field more wet, is the second portion of a component. It could be an irrigation system, which is upwards of $100,000 to $150,000 as bid. And then the other is a water cannon, which is less expensive. So we gave that range because it's further discussion we need to have with you. I have districts that would say, we'd love to have irrigation because we really wanted to have to deal with a water cannon. We don't come from the North Fork and farms and vineyards, so we wouldn't want to play with a water cannon. My districts on the North Fork would probably think that's pretty easy. So it's a matter of how you also want to solve the problem and how you can maintain it and the extra things that you can do in recognition that that water cannon needs to be handled, not the irrigation. So you can decrease and increase the cost. But those are things as we continue the dialogue, as you start to say to us, what is it? What do you think we're going to be bidding as we come in the future? It might be a multiple of things because maybe you'll make the decision. That would be wonderful if you have a decision when we go to bid. If you don't, we can do it so you can price it out. But we'll help you with that, Larry, and we'll kind of pick those pieces so you can kind of pick and choose.
Okay, and then I don't come from a really sports family, so excuse me if this, but I was talking to somebody who had a number of children go through the district and very good in sports, and they all got sports scholarships and everything else, and he said he was never at a game played on artificial turf where there weren't a bunch of people sitting down with their knees wrapped or their ankles wrapped. And again, it was totally anecdotal, where he said he thinks there's a higher percentage of injuries now than a generation ago, and he attributes that to turf fields. So I don't know if that is true or not true, or if it's just more people are playing sports, so more people are going to be injured, or what. But I just thought I would see if there's any. I mean, yes, and versus a good grass field, and a good grass field is not just throwing seed on a piece of mud. I know a good grass field has to be tilled and actually has to be maintained and everything else, but. So I guess the question is, do we have an unusual amount of injuries of our sports teams? How many people are out on any particular game and can't play?
Ms. Joannan, can you answer that question? No, not at this time. She'll get back to it.
I just wanted to speak, Larry, to that point. Is a lot of the research in sports is showing that part of the reason we're seeing an increase in injuries is we're seeing an increase in kids specializing in sports. And when you play one sport 4 seasons, you're putting stress on the same joints and parts of your body by doing that we didn't see 10 years ago for kids. They were playing 3 different sports, turning and using their bodies in different ways. And so we are seeing an increase in injuries, but they are in the sports world attributing that to the specialization in sports for a lot of kids these days.
Yeah, I'm going to turn it the other way, and Beth, with all due respect, I'm going to disagree with you. I've played on these fields many times, and they're hotter, they're harder, and the studies I've seen lead to, have all shown a higher incidence of serious injuries, torn ACLs especially, and especially in younger people, arise with more frequency on turf than certainly on natural grass. And I haven't seen a single study that has reached a contrary conclusion. But among the turfs that you're proposing here, is there any one that stands out on a safety basis as being better for young adults?
As best to worst? Yeah, probably cool field would be our best so far, right? our experience of what we're installing and what we're designing and seeing installed, the cool fill has shown to be the most cool. I don't know. They probably would, but that's, neither of us are employed by Nike at the moment, so, or expect to be.
Nike hasn't really been in the business. Maybe. They may be, yes, but they haven't been.
I couldn't really hear when you were giving the presentation, but did you say that the Nike fill is the one that there's only around 10 fields because they don't have enough of the product? Was that's what you said was the Nike, right? That it's not, because that's not the understanding I had from the. Wasn't mentioned when we had another presentation the other day, so that was new information for me. And when you say that rubber infill is what'd you say before, that it was like the most popular or the best? Are you talking about the cool fill? Is that considered rubber fill too, or just the plain?
I was just talking about the plain SBR from rubber.
The plain traditional, or the whatever, I don't know, traditional. And in speaking about that rubber fill, you said that there is a certain percentage, I thought it said like 0.06 pounds per ton or something like that of, quote, liberated fiber. Could you explain what liberated fiber means in this presentation? There was the word liberated fiber, I think.
He's thinking no.
I'll find it. Now, there was a certain percentage of, did anybody else catch that, or just?
Why don't you go to your next?
Yeah. Okay, I'll go to another question then. The TPE fill, you said you really did not recommend that, and that it wasn't very much used here. Is that it? And is that because it's more expensive than some of the others, or?
A little bit because it's more expensive. It's harder to get. It's also a specialized manufactured product, and they have had issues with the manufacturer where they thought they were getting one thing, and then they went to their field and they found that it wasn't manufactured correctly, and they had issues with it actually melting when the field got to a certain temperature. So basically, you have all these particles of plastic and rubber, and they were melting. But we don't have a lot of experience using that. It hasn't been used. Some of the issues that we've heard about with that product.
Getting back to my first question, under glossary of infill materials, the section on crumb rubber, it says crumb rubber infill is substantially metal-free. According to STC guidelines for crumb rubber infill, should not contain liberated fiber in an amount that exceeds 0.01% of the total weight of crumb rubber, or 0.6 pounds per ton. What is liberated fiber, if you know?
I don't know, but I would assume that would be small little particles that, of the rubber that. So I'm certain that they would put it through a sieve, these rubber, and when they pack it up for shipping, it has to meet a certain standard. That probably came out of the Synthetic Turf Council standards for infill materials. I'm not really sure exactly. I could look up and find out exactly what that means. But I'm thinking it's like loose dust type particles from the rubber that they would want.
Roger, one of you mentioned that you've done this presentation like 3 times in the last 3 weeks or something similar. What are the other districts concerned about the chemical composition? I mean, because we haven't really addressed that here. I mean, we've had other presentations where we talked about the dust and long-term effects and the impact and the health impacts, aside from the mechanical injuries, which you did touch upon. But I'm just wondering, like, what has come out of those meetings, if...
What's driving us to make the presentations is quite honestly, is the media blitz in the discussion of how these fields may not be causing other complications to the people who are playing on them. I think in the past week, it's a number of months ago, one article on TV made the major stations all within like 3 days. This week, I think that's happened again. So I just wait for my phone to ring to go in conjunction with that discussion. It's not unlike in my profession when we have a tragedy that occurs when someone gets into a building, the discussion of security heightens again, and we can try to contend with it. That's really what's been driving it. And we are making these presentations to try to give the communities a complete understanding of what is available and what the impacts of those are to you to purchase and maintain, and the whys. So I expect that we'll be doing more of them. What will be interesting to me as our designers, is where will this be heading? Because we're not sure. It's not as if everyone that we have as a client has said, give me the coconuts. That's interesting too, because we've had these discussions and we have clients who are saying to us, thank you very much, but this is what we want to do, and this is why we want to do it.
I might just add, Roger, I think when product into it, we want to use this type of infill. The whole thing. Certain product with a certain infill, and then they have to warranty that.
It's a great point, because in essence, when I was discussing before my in and out of the room, that's exactly my problem, or our problem as a firm tonight. We have a district that has researched itself in determining what it wants to use and has directed what it wants to use. Now the industry is saying to itself, thank you very much for choosing the chicken salad, but we weren't looking for chicken salad to go with this hero. And we're not exactly sure those two things go together, and we're not sure how we can warranty that for you. And it starts to create a whole nother set of dynamics that aren't quite there. Some of the manufacturers have an infill that says this is the fill material that we will warranty in the same capacity that we warranty another one of our infills. And I think that's an important piece to keep in mind as we keep moving ahead. We also have to keep, one of the things that, if you don't mind me just mentioning, as I understand it, some of the articles this week started to address the cost of organic fill. I had one of my clients call me and say, gee, I heard that you can purchase organic fill for X. And that's, we couldn't even get close to that discussion based upon the bid we did 30 days ago. And that's the fact I have in front of you. We've bid one of these within this parameter or this arena. And so whatever you're hearing can only be the reality of what is actually being bid. So if you've heard, and I think it's great that you've met with other vendors and people who are suppliers. I think it's wonderful, because you're trying to get all the information that you can get that's out there. But as we continue to bid projects, we're going to get more numbers, and we're going to get a better sense of what those come out to be.
I don't know if you answered this before when we asked about East Meadow, but are you, with all of the school districts that you have, your company has worked on, have any of them opted to maintain a natural fields? Is that?
We have one that is awarded an organic infill. That's the one we're in construction on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I must have misspoke. I don't mean the organics. I mean that they're just going with natural grass.
Natural grass.
Natural grass.
Most of them still have natural grass areas. They're looking to, we have districts that have one field. You know, I have one client that has a track and a field and a baseball field and a softball field. That's what they own. So they're obviously trying to leave as much the grass that's left, but inside the track became a synthetic field because they're trying to contend with boys and girls sports for 3 different types of sports, and that happens. We have another client that has quite a bit of acreage. They probably could support as many as 6 fields, but want 2 synthetics and 4 grass, because there's a point of this becomes kind of a lot of plastic too. You know, you have to deal with it.
Sometimes by having a synthetic turf field, it allows them
Get off them.
get off of them, rest one for a year, and everybody can use the synthetic turf field. Now they're natural grass fields. A lot of districts have plenty of natural grass fields besides the synthetic turf.
Very few. I think the question might be, do I have any that are just grass? I don't know. There might be some left with grass, but I'm sure they're deciding when they're going to be getting their synthetic field. That's really what we've been dealing with.
Thank you.
I have one more, Phil, and then back to the bond with a couple of questions. If Nike Grind were available without, let's call it an unlimited quantity, to the point where if we decided on that and the money difference was viewed as not an option, based on, be it the news articles or the other concerns or the, quote, potential risk, would you then use Nike Grind in the field because it would eliminate to a certain degree the use of used tires as being the infill material? And it's not a trick question. I mean, I just...
Keep in mind, Nike Grind is imported from either Indonesia or China. So,
Right, but the tires are too, so it's...
so you do have to deal with the fact of what actually is in that, what kind of testing they have over there to make sure you're getting what you're supposed to get. Now, I'm sure Nike would stand behind that. From what I've heard, the Nike infill is not much different than the rubber infill that the field is designed for. I wouldn't have any problem using that.
And now, Mr. Roger. Science room renovations that are now up at SED already. One of the questions that came about as the bond was the cabinetry and the need to order either a lot of it or put in an order because the lead time might take 6 months to get. Have we addressed that in a way that if we're in fact going to get this back in 42 weeks and literally on June 25th start ripping out science rooms at Schreiber and Weber, will we have cabinets to put back in?
Yes, we've contacted a manufacturer who has already produced some shop drawings. We're going to sit down with you and go over that with you. What he said we can do is potentially put out a letter of intent from the district, and they can reserve a production slot for you. But that does not guarantee that you're going to have the furniture in time for the summer. It just means that you have a reserved slot. If the lead times are 16 weeks or 20 weeks, and we get approval in May, that means you're not going to have casework until September.
Yeah, what that also addresses the ability to purchase those items offline or on state contract or BOCES or county contracts, which we have done, and I believe we've done with you on other product, for other projects that you're doing. One of the things, there is the benefit in that, is that, and that could be of multiple vendors who are capable of doing that. At the time of permit is the time of release of that game, time to go, because the permit's in your hand. Able to not get stuck in the overall bidding process, because those are at time savings. If and Alan, if this pushes back, we're going to watch this 42-week thing. When we were talking to you during the bond, it wasn't 42. It was, I think, 32 or 34. So it's kind of grown as we're going through, to kind of watch that with you and then give you a cutoff point. Typically, it's around April 1st to get that product on a job site by August.
But Mary, in looking at that, do we have a legal issue that would prevent us from bidding cabinetry, for example, in January, so that we put the order in and it was already produced and on job site in July of 2016? I mean, one of the comments was if we try to buy it in phases, we may get different cabinetry, which is an issue, versus buying it all in bulk in year one and saying to the manufacturer in the bid, you have to store it for us until the summer of 2017. But what prevents us from buying it all, for argument's sake, in January, or going out to bid for it, either through BOCES or just as a regular bid, awarding it, getting it manufactured in that 16-week cycle so that it's here in July? I'm just, as a hypothetical, I don't know if we're legally even allowed to do it, but if we are, why wouldn't we go down that route? Because we're not going to pay for it till he delivers anyway. So it almost is the same timing for us money-wise.
Legally, there's nothing to preclude us from doing that. I think Roger's talking conservatively in case there's no possibility of doing science rooms this summer. And I think he's saying then you're going to have cabinetry being stored, some of it for 2 years and some for 1 year. I probably shouldn't be speaking for you, but that's the impression I got.
There's many answers in that. Frank and I are describing a process that allows you to talk to the vendor because they are pre-bid product. Those cabinetries are a BOCES, I think it's a BOCES line item product, and allows you to get those prices and preeminently determine, or I don't know what word I'm looking for, but try to get ahead of the game and when we can get that product to you. So I need to work that out with your business office and try to get those dates in place as a last minute for this first summer.
Right, but ultimately, we should come up with a solution over, let's say, the rest of this year.
Oh, yeah.
So that
you're ready for it.
We don't get to the point where you get the green light, we bid it, we start tearing out the stuff, and we have nothing to put back in.
And that's one of the reasons I wanted to just keep that date in our heads. If it's not ordered and in the manufacturing pipeline by April 1st, we're not going to get it. And the way state ed is working at the present time, in my opinion, it's not even a slow drip anymore. This is all going to be one big problem as it all hits the marketplace because it's slowly jamming up, and everyone is in the same boat as we're seeing it. We have work that couldn't get done this past summer, so we're holding it. Now we're going to bid it in January, and I couldn't be the only firm, or those couldn't be only school districts that are going to be faced with that. So we have to watch that process too. If you stay in those vendors and manufacturers and they are still available, you don't have to, we'll be buying the same cabinet a year later. So that concept of, do I need to store them? We've done that too. We've done, and I think we had this discussion, we've done 2 and 3 years of science rooms with the same vendor, just implementing it every year in the purchase. So I'll keep you abreast of that, and Frank will obviously do that with you too to keep a sense. There's a break point. And look how funny it is. All of a sudden we're talking about fields and windows. Windows will take longer to get, but they may not affect us because we do a lot of that work at night. But the minute that mechanical, electrical, and plumbing kicks in, it's just been a disaster for the time frames. Yeah, sometime we try to look and see what our total work duration is, and also take a look at what your anticipation is, meaning what are your events that you would like to have in that space. We have some districts that say we can give it up for October and November, but we'd absolutely like to have it by mid-December. That changes the kind of the parameters. If it's shorter, then it might take us into a double work session, you know, day and night to get it done. More things to talk about. Just the pictures. At some point, I'm going to figure around, January or February, we're going to be in kind of a more interesting discussion of scheduling, because by then you have to make decisions on what we're going to interrupt or not. So at this point, we just can't tell on some of them.
Not at all. Faculty in the district and the staff have been very cooperative. Whenever we've called for meetings, they've been available, and we've worked diligently and consistently from essentially May to get to where we're at right now.
Just a couple of questions. One member of the community has made a very generous offer to help with windows and possibly provide a refurbishing of windows. I understand. Could you give us like a recap of where we stand on that?
Yes, I can. We've been able to evaluate that discussion, and it has merit. However, it is not something in which you can entertain the concept of, and forgive me, I don't mean to make this kind of lighthearted, but you know, come on down, fix my windows. What we're looking at is the ability to take that thought, evaluate the existing windows as to what they are on a window-by-window basis, be able to do the repairs on the windows that are actually non-functional. And that is able to be done, but where the hurdle was to ascertain that we can publicly bid that, which we can, and ascertain that we can get more than one public bidder, which we can. And I think that, and we've identified that concept to your community. And that concept has been accepted, and we think that we would continue to have that dialogue with you and the board, because I think there is an opportunity to take that advantage. You'll gain cost savings and still achieve the end run, the end goal.
But at this point, you couldn't give us an estimate as to how much of, because you haven't obviously gone window by window in every building, telling us how much we might be able to save.
We could probably in less than about 2 to 4 weeks give you that number. It is worth the discussion and worth entertaining the concept. But on your behalf, it is imperative that I represent to you and to your community and anyone who is involved in this, that it is not a sole-sourced thought, or that it is able to be a bid project, and are there others capable of doing it? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. We have used another entity, another firm that has bid work for us, done a remarkably good job, and also, I guess, in all fairness and understanding of the community resident, their product is a very, very good product as a product in and of itself. So it is understandable that we entertain that on your behalf, and I think we have to listen to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
We really appreciate
See
you
you soon.
coming in. Yep, thank you. We'll now move to the committee reports. The first would be policy and personnel.
Our last Policy and Personnel Committee meeting was on Friday, September 18th, and we had a very informative discussion with the Director of Technology, Mr. Ryan Maloney, talking about how we can improve our website and different options. There's actually quite a detailed summary that'll be posted, if it's not already posted online, if you missed the meeting. You're talking about the different options that we have for improving the website. And our next meeting will be on October 23rd at 8:30 in the morning in the annex. The topic will probably be talking about our goal of communicating with the community and better communications or increasing communications, but that will be made definitive in the next couple of days and posted. Thank you.
Budget?
We've had a number of meetings, just a couple points. They were basically infill discussions. Just on the budget side, just as a general comment for the community, this year we are actually spending less per pupil than we spent last year because our population has gone up by over 100 students year over year. We have gone down from roughly 27,000 per student to now about 26,500. And that has been done through efficiency rather than anything else. And so really from an administrative, teacher, building head and everything else, I don't know that there are a lot of school districts that are actually seeing reductions in their cost per pupil across the average. The municipality tax cap came out at 0.73. Ours will be probably close to that. That creates a gap in the budget for those who were talking about money earlier in class size and everything else. There is a direct correlation. If we are limited by that, there is a hole then automatically of somewhere between, my guess is 1.5 to 2 million that we will be short. However, on the plus side, we underspent last year's budget and we were able to put $1 million back into reserves in and above what we had estimated. So there's a little bit of wiggle room there. What else was I trying to remember to do? Oh, just on the overall population of the children in the building. Oddly enough, 90% of the increase of the 100 year over year has come at the secondary level and not at the elementary level. Year over year, we're only up, I think, 12 children at the elementary level, but roughly 100 between Weber and Schreiber. We are still trending down when you look at second grade, first grade, kindergarten. We are continuing actually to see a declining enrollment coming in the front door. And there is the huge anomaly of third grade with 455 kids compared to all the other grade levels. And when that migrates out, if the kindergarten trend continues, we will, for the first time, see then a real drop-off at the elementary level in 2 years when that moves through, but it will only exacerbate the population first at Weber and then ultimately at Schreiber as that cohort moves all the way through the system. Well, the next meeting is this Friday, joint budget curriculum, and then it's followed by a meeting on the 19th, I believe. It would be the next budget meeting, right? Monday the 19th, which would be 8:30 at the Daily Annex. And there we're going to get into sort of more of the budget. Oh, the one other thing that has impacted us potentially, LIPA/PSEG has won based on a New York State legislature decision that they are able to remove their properties from the tax roll, and they will no longer pay us as part of the general assessment, but will be coming in under pilots. The formula is yet to be determined. It could impact us negatively, even though dollar for dollar it is supposed to stay the same. The fact that $3 million may be coming off the assessment roll may change the way the formula works for our school district. That won't be an issue if New York State lets us go backwards and redo the formula for the existing year, but it is an issue for next year if we can't go backwards, and the impact is not yet been calculated, but it could whack us up on the side of the head.
Curriculum, we met on September 25th, and we discussed, basically we looked at our schedule going forward and tried to hit some tentative dates. We're going to try to work on some of our items, and we had a brief discussion of enrichment and the fact that we're meeting on this Friday to discuss that more fully with the Budget Committee as well. And our next meeting after that is a week from Friday on the 19th. 16th, sorry. Yeah, 16th. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, I'll move to the action items and make a motion for item A1 through C8. Do I have a second? Mrs. Johnson? All in favor? 7-0. Thank you. And I guess old business first. Resolution update. Larry, did you have an update for us?
Yes, I do. Just let me open it up here. 1 second, got to find the right window. Sorry, I had to go twice in a row. It gets confusing here. Anyway, the good news is that two of our amendments, the two amendments that we approved last time, were both approved at the resolutions dinner of the New York State School Boards Association, and will come up for a vote at the National School Boards Association meeting on October 20th. Right, Nassau, Suffolk, and New York, I'm sorry. And what we're going to do is, I assume for the most part that we are going to follow what Nassau Suffolk School Boards Association did in most of the resolutions. However, there were a couple that I had pulled out, and I believe I gave you the information on it. And let me just find them. It is, no, it's in my mail here. Where is my mail? Oh, it's going to be here and here. And
the budget meeting, the 19th or the 26th? Because the 19th we're at the conference.
Hold on, I'll check the calendar.
the first one we were going to review is number 2, which is the one that we had an amendment for. There was an additional amendment from another school district on that, basically adding the words "to express no confidence." And my initial hunch is that if we support that, we sort of dilute the chances of our amendment getting approved. So I would just want a sense of the board as to whether or not we should oppose it. That was opposed at the resolutions dinner, and whether we should go along with Nassau Suffolk on that one. So I guess if we don't have any objections, that is the way I will vote. The next one is let me just see. I've just got to find that email. It was the next one was the Affordable Care Act. We had voted to oppose that. The resolutions committee, the Nassau Suffolk dinner, they voted to support that. So it's a question of whether we want to stick with our opposition or change it. And our opposition was based on the fact that any opening up that can of worms could have a lot of unintended consequences. However, the other districts felt that the idea of getting rid of the Cadillac tax would be positive for the school districts in general. So that's sort of where we stand. So I just want to know if anybody has any change of heart on that, or if we should continue to oppose it. Okay. There is the next one is on APPR, where a district has proposed to add the word "no confidence" into the resolution, asking for the APPR to be approved, to be improved. That was voted in opposition at the resolutions dinner. So I want to know whether people are in agreement that we should stick with the Nassau Suffolk School Boards, if we should support that resolution. I personally don't have any confidence, but I also think that politically it probably is better to, if you want to accomplish something, to not immediately tell people that they're wrong when you walk into the door. So I think strategically we might be better off opposing that. So if there are no objections, we'll do that. The last one relates to establishing voting wards. It's something that doesn't really relate to us. It's really a sort of a hot button issue, a split decision, and I would recommend that we punt. We're done. Thank you.
Okay, the budget meeting is October 26th, and I just want to thank Larry and Chris really for their involvement in all of this and attending all these conferences and following up with everything and informing all of us and taking it on. It's great that our district's involved and great that you do it, and we just get to hear your recommendations, which are always good, so thank you. And any new business? Okay, new business?
Oh, no.
And we will have another opportunity for the community to be heard.
George Bodnar. I understand that this is about money and budgets are about priorities. I do not want to see my son in an overcrowded class next year. I don't think anyone can fault me or my wife for that. All of you have been advocates for your own children in the past. I know you can be Midas, but you are our representatives. We look upon you to find solutions, and if you can, then tell us so. Or go over the tax cap, and if it fails, then we as a community deserve what it will come. And I understand the consequences, and I'm familiar with those issues. I believe that there are enough members of the community that will give you a 60% vote. When Joshua Chamberlain was given the impossible suicidal task of defending Round Top, which was key to the victory of the North over the South, he didn't give up. He charged even when his guns were empty. You lead the way, and I believe many of us will follow you. I will continue advocating for my child and every other child here in the district, because I don't think whatever happens to my child has to be equal for every other child. I hope that this is not taken personally, because it is not. Thank you. Good night. And by the way, I do appreciate the hard work that you do. You don't get paid. You have homes, you have families, as we do too. So I do understand that. I'm not unaware of that. But as elected officials that wanted to be sitting there, I guess you get paid in educational money. Thank you.
Rose Borda. A second goal of the Board of Education Policy and Personnel Committee is to improve openness and transparency, including a more thorough discussion at general meetings. I'm asking that the Aspen electronic gradebook be placed on one of the agenda items at a future Policy and Personnel Committee meeting. In this way, we can have an open discussion about implementing the electronic gradebook for the next school year. Rather than talk about how it cannot be done, let's talk about how to make it happen for next year. Thank you.
Hi, Dave Sattinger. First, I support the Aspen electronic site. I think it's fantastic when I get my kids' grades on a timely basis, and I think everybody really should comply. However, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to get to the turf fill. And I just spoke with the BBS guys, and I would encourage you to look into a potential hybrid solution. A lot of times the real concerns with respect to crumb rubber has to do with the ingestion of it. And in reality, that is mostly going to happen in the infield and in the soccer goalie areas. So it may be a good idea to see if we could have a hybrid solution in which potentially the infield and the soccer goalie areas are organic, with a separate drainage system, in which we can really protect most of the kids that are going to be sliding and diving, and then you could look at a different pad for the rest of the fields with crumb rubber, where there won't nearly be as many kids diving and sliding into the area. My kid plays on baseball fields all the time, where sometimes it's infield, where it's turf and grass, and outfield. They seem to think it would be possible to design a field, because I just talked to them outside, The concern is whether or not the field manufacturer would be able to warranty it and what would happen in the overlay areas. So considering that almost all the diving's done and sliding's done in infields and in soccer goalie areas, you might be able to find a way to meet the community needs for the best of everyone, both cost savings wise and health wise, by creating an organic area where the kids are most at risk. Thanks.
Corey Bodnar. I support, obviously, a lot of the parents came out this evening to discuss the enrichment programs and the class size, which I definitely support, and I came out in June, and everyone said, come to more meetings, and I'm glad I came tonight. And the presentation that was up there about the fields was definitely informative. I definitely like the hybrid solution, if that's possible. But one of the things that you had brought up was better communication with the community, and I think that's definitely needed. One of the things that I spoke about in June was looking at the bond, and specifically at, we just approved $70 million. Where is that money going? I think it was Mary who last time in June had mentioned a roof where we spent $600,000, but we only got 2/3 of it done. We wanted to get all of it done for $600,000. So I know there's a page where, I don't believe that was specifically in the bond, but you guys have a page now on the website that goes over updates to the bond. The June, they'll probably have one for tonight that goes over some of the updates, but it doesn't have a line item. It doesn't have what are the toilets going to cost, what are the windows going to cost, because at the budget meeting, you might go over every single line item. I can't go to the budget meeting Friday mornings. If there's a site or a link to that where what's estimated, because you obviously already had the bond, this is what we were proposing, where are we, and at what stages are those items? I know nothing, they're in the works, I mentioned it, but going forward, what are those items going to be? Are we underbid? Are we overbid? Can we take some of this money and use it over there? Because that way, at least we're, just as you do your financial planning at home, okay, can we afford that? We budgeted $10,000 for the bathroom, but we're at 8, great. Or we're at 14, what do we do? So at least if we can see that and what's going on, it gives us a better sense of how you guys are spending the money. Listen, you have a hard job, you're pulled in many different directions, but that would at least lead to the transparency, the communication, us being better educated, and then us communicating with you what we can do to solve other issues as well too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mary, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't really bid on things in the bond yet that we would put up that's pending approval. Is that correct?
Correct. The only documentation we have thus far is the document that BBS did present publicly in the spring, which was the phasing document, which indicated by building and each generic project how much they were estimating it to cost. But no, we have not spent funds other than architectural fees, and probably until this queue, till we go through the queue, the 42 weeks, we won't have any costs to note probably until next summer. But we can certainly put the phasing information up on the bond page. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nobody else, we're adjourned. Thank you.